I want to spend a little bit of time now on the bill that I introduced, H.R. 910, which is the bill on greenhouse gases being regulated by the EPA. I voted for the Clean Air Act in 1990. I don't remember the vote total, but I want to say that it was pretty overwhelming in the Congress. I was not on the committee then on Energy and Commerce. And our bill does not undermine the Clean Air Act. All the things that it regulates are still regulated. Ozone, lead, all the particulates, they're still there. Now, the Senate passed an amendment back then to, in fact, regulate greenhouse gases. And when it went to the conference, when a bill passes, both bodies, it goes to what we call a conference, House Senate conference. John Dingell was the chairman of the conference. He's still in Congress from Michigan, was chairman of the committee that I now chair. And the Senate receded to the House, meaning the Senate provision to regulate greenhouse gases dropped. It was not part of the bill. We had a debate, cap and trade, in the last Congress. I opposed it. I opposed it for lots of reasons. I said earlier that we've lost 1 in 5 manufacturing jobs. Consumers Energy told us that if this bill passed, because we use more coal than other states, national average is about 45%, we're about 65%. Wow. Indiana and Ohio are 90% or so. Our utility costs are going to go up by almost 20% just because of the act. What's that going to do for jobs? I want people working. Sure, you can give people vouchers to help pay for their energy costs. Where are they going to work? When I visited a company, Niles Steel Tank, obviously it's in Niles. It's hard work. They fabricate steel tanks, 200-gallon, 1,000-gallon, welding. It's tough work. And the owner, and they've been there, I don't know, 80 years. You can imagine the company and the people that are working there. Said, you know, if that cap and trade bill goes through, we're shutting down our day shift because we cannot afford the power price increase that we're going to have to pay. And if we're going to compete with other companies, and they've got a bunch of them in the Midwest, they're not staying in Michigan. They're going. We'll have to put people to work only at night when the power prices are lower. Cap and trade bill, which no other country was really signing up with. India and China came and testified. They didn't want to have any part with it. They're building new coal plants faster than every week. Our jobs are going to go, and they were never going to come back. That was my view. And I led the debate against the bill, and it passed. Passed by 7 votes. So it went to the Senate. Barbara Boxer's my counterpart over there, big supporter of the legislation. Democrats controlled the Senate 60-40 for most of the session, the majority of the 2 years. She couldn't even get a bill out of subcommittee, let alone full committee, let alone to the Senate floor. Because they knew what the costs were going to be incurred. Lisa Jackson, administrator of EPA, said, I'm paraphrasing here, if you let us regulate this, it's going to cost a lot more than if we legislate. Well, Congress told them not to regulate greenhouse gases, and that's in fact what they're trying to do. And you can look at all the different scientific studies, and if you look at if this greenhouse gas regulation bill goes forward, what does the temperature drop in 100 years? I want to say it's 1/100 of 1 degree, particularly when no one else is doing it. So what are you going to do? You're going to send all these jobs someplace else. They told us, in essence, that they didn't do an economic analysis on all these jobs losses. There's not a manufacturing facility in this country, I don't think, that would be exempt from this. So you're going to add to the costs. Whether you're making glass or refining oil or whatever it might be, you're going to increase the cost. And those jobs could go, well, someplace else. That's not what we're about. I put out a discussion draft of the legislation, I want to say the end of January. I reached out to the other side of the aisle. If you look at the bill, first 4 sponsors are Upton, Rahal, Whitfield, Peterson. Rahal's a Democrat. He's from West Virginia. He was chairman of the Natural Resources Committee in the last Congress. He is now the ranking member, since the Democrats aren't in charge, or given the title ranking, of the Transportation Committee. Colin Peterson, his name was on the top floor. He was chairman of the House Ag Committee. He is now ranking member of the House Ag Committee. And we have a number of Democrats that have signed on to the legislation. We passed it out of committee last week, 34-19. It will likely be on the House floor this next month. Amendments are going to be allowed to be happening, as they should be, particularly being relevant. And it's actually the pending item of business today on the Senate floor. Mitch McConnell brought it up as an amendment, and Barbara Boxer was quoted, she's again my counterpart, as saying the votes are there to pass this. Now, one Democrat senator said actually they think they're in the upper 50s, maybe even 60 votes, because remember in the Senate you need 60 to avoid a filibuster. So it is being debated in the Senate. We'll see what happens when they come back next week. But you could have a vote on our bill. It's a little bit different in the Senate because of some amendments. But they could be voting on it next Tuesday or Wednesday. But the bottom line for us is EPA shouldn't be regulating this. The Congress should take a look at the impact, particularly on the jobs and the economic impact across every sector. And that's what we're intending to do with this legislation as it goes. The last thing I'm just